The entire world is excited about an independent Scotland! You've got the intelligence, you've got the manpower, and the most beautiful women in the world!
Yeah, baby!
Fellas, be good. Yeah, it was, man, it's such mayhem. You know, I saw Miliband on the street earlier. He looked like a little rabbit caught in the crosshairs of a major shotgun. Oh, no! Things are going insane here, and I love the reaction of BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, who are in meltdown over this this enormous calamity facing them. Paul Mason, who I'm sure you remember from Newsnight, he came out and said publicly today on his Twitter page that thank God I'm out of the BBC. They've gone into maximum propaganda overdrive. Not since the Iraq War has the propaganda been so atrocious over the Scotland-Indy referendum. So here's a major guy in the UK media coming out and basically pointing the finger at the BBC as propagandists. But we knew that already, right? Yay! Exactly. How many people watch RT? Yay! How many people are disappointed that you're not looking at Stacy right now?
Yes! I want you!
Thank you so much.
He's a sick
my one fan. It's like, I thought Stacey would be here. Well, we love doing this show in London. You know, you look at the show, you look out over us, you look at the background there. It's the City of London, conveniently located next to the Tower of London. And, you know, I'm just waiting for the good times to really start rolling, because the bankers are starting to understand that they've got a crisis of conscience. And more you're hearing stories about bankers committing suicide. So I've got my binoculars. Jump, you motherfucker! Yeah, jump! And you know, it's fantastic spectator sport. You know, tourists are walking around. What's that? You know, well, it's another banker for Jesus. He's selling securitized God bonds in hell. Trying to buy his way out of hell. You know, the amazing thing about the prison industry is that actually bankers who took the prison industry private in America, you know, this is an amazing story, is coming to you in the UK, unless you vote yes and get rid of the scoundrels and have something more appropriately democratic and free here. But if you let the continuation of the bankster scum crawl up your anuses here, as they're wont to do, you'll end up with a privatized prison industry as well. And in the privatized prison industry in America, the prisons are sold to private corporations and then listed on the private stock exchange. And then they do deals with the local sheriff and the local municipality that guarantee 98% occupancy. I kid you not. Coming to you. And of course they try to put some bankers in jail, but of course they just did a leveraged buyout of the prison and walked out. So that's that story here. Well, I like to follow the news and see what's, you know, keep current on what's happening. This is one of my favorite. Oh, I love it. You know.
I want nice Keiser's glasses.
There we go. There we go. It's one of my favorite stories in the recent past. Here's a protester at Barclays Bank. The customer pooed on the floor of Barclays.
Hey, Joby.
Yeah.
Do you know what a Joby is?
No, I have no freaking idea. But everyone seems to enjoy it, so I'm going to go with it. You know, anyone like to, should we get into this? Jobby business? What? You know, I own a castle in this country, by the way. Caverlock Castle? If you freedom, do I get my castle back? So I take it Jobby is, poo.
Yeah.
right, well, very well then. There he is. There's a customer at Barclays Bank. He's making a deposit at Barclays, expressing his big nice round circle there. And there's BBC's Nick Robinson. Look, he's trying to get a good shot.
A big boy. He's a big boy.
Yeah, yeah. Now here's an interesting story about yesterday, of course, was September 11th. Celebrating 9/11. So here we have I actually am going to do a little reenactment of 9/11 a little earlier, a little later. Something to look forward to. But did you know on September 11th in the year 1297, Scottish forces led by William Wallace defeated a far larger English army at the Battle of Stirling Bridge. A bloody affair. The English were forced into a narrow bridge which collapsed, drowning many. Wallace celebrated by having the skin from the dead body of the King Edward's treasurer, the George Osborne of his day, cut into pieces as grisly souvenirs. According to the Lankercoast Chronicle, Wallace had, quote, a broad strip taken from the head to the heel to make himself a baldric for his sword. I think Osborne could make a fantastic baldric for somebody's sword. And here's the latest news. J.D. Witherspoon Chairman Tim Martin. So he dismissed predictions that Scotland will face a decade of uncertainty in votes for independence. He says, total nonsense. There's no reason why Scotland shouldn't thrive as an independent economy. And he talks about New Zealand, Switzerland, Singapore, etc. You see, so all that nonsense the BBC is trying to push, and all these bankers are trying to push, all these big corporations are trying to push, no good, independent, you need us. That's complete hogwash. Let me explain something. You're sitting on 1.5 trillion in revenues yet to be exploited on the oil. That's, economic point number one. Economic point number two is that you've got at least a third of Britain's gold. You are owed at least a third of Britain's gold. That's 100 tons of gold. That's $4 billion right there. And go back in time. Gordon Brown sold 400 tons of Britain's gold illegally. A third of that was yours. That's 200 tons. That's $8 billion. That's the national debt gone in a heartbeat. Plus the oil. You're fucking Singapore. Yeah. So here's the exact quote from Paul Mason. He says, "Not since Iraq have I seen BBC News working at propaganda strength like this. So glad I'm out of there." Good on you, Paul. Yeah. Speaking of the BBC, one day after her appointment, new BBC chief Rona Fairhead is being sued for supervising the laundry of billions of dollars for Mexican drug cartels while she was at HSBC. BBC put out a secret gag order not to mention this. She used to be head of the risk department at HSBC, including HSBC's Evershot Rail Group that runs a monopoly train leasing contract that extorts 10 times the fees for train service in the UK that you would find on continental Europe. So Rona Fairhead, down to the Tower of London. Donna Fairhead loses her head. Now, let's get into why this is all happening. Why does the media and the politicians and the corporations feel that they can openly lie to you? Why do they feel that they can distort the truth? Why does Nick over there at the BBC feel he can just openly lie and distort to you? Because, according to the FT, a fear of numbers has left many Britons unable to assess the arguments of politicians and officials due to financial and economic illiteracy. They suffer from a numeracy deficit. That's what the FT says. You suffer from a numeracy deficit. Economics is too complicated for you. Mathematics? No. Don't try. Watch that show about baking cakes. Yeah, Mary Berry. Little flour on her tits. Hi, I'm Mary Berry. I've got flour on my tits. Here's Paul Hollywood. He just boned me. We love these cakes. Now let's talk about, you're economically illiterate. You suffer from financial illiteracy. And while you are suffering from financial illiteracy, Wachovia, Wells Fargo, HSBC, $300 billion in Mexican drug cartel money laundering, overseen by the now head of the BBC. Bank of New York, 0.3% on all Forex transactions for 30 years stolen. Merrill Lynch stole trillions from FDIC insured balance. Lehman Brothers engaged in massive accounting fraud. HSBC takes a $700 million charge for Mexico money laundering fine. HSBC also admitted to laundering money for Hezbollah. Hezbollah is, according to the UK government, a terrorist organization. HSBC, yeah, it was a mistake. No, I know. We laundered money for them, but it was an oversight. So they paid a small fine. They didn't do anything about it. JP Morgan bankrupts Casino Italy. JP Morgan bankrupts Jefferson County. JP Morgan prints money. They earn interest on the money, interest on funds it borrows. JP Morgan borrows money from the central bank, and it earns more interest on the money that it borrowed than it costs to borrow the money. They have a negative interest rate. And then you look at your binoculars and you just hope they all fly out the window. Wells Fargo, nickel and dimed us death with a malicious algorithm designed to maximize client pain while ignoring actual sequence of events, with the net result of an overdraft balance that was 4 times higher than it would have been if the proper temporal sequence had been followed. Again, FT, just saying, hey, here's Wells Fargo. They're engaging in extortion, racketeering, they're stealing money out of people's accounts because they have an algorithm designed for it. It's a malicious algorithm. They create malicious software to go into your bank account, steal the money and say, you're overdraft, because you had to take your kid to the hospital and you were 5 minutes late on that deposit, so they were going to charge you 4 times for it. Barclays is sorry for LIBOR rigging as profits beat estimates. Credit Suisse trader fined for wall-crossing charades. The head of credit trading at Credit Suisse has been fined £210,000 for disclosing non-confidential or confidential information about a forthcoming $2.5 billion deal after inviting a UK fund manager to play charades. The latest market craze, stock trading robots reacting to stories written by robots. Forbes has a narrative science software to create narrative content from data into customized stories to fit voice, style, and tone. Meanwhile, 86% of trading on the various exchanges are done by robots. So you've got robots reading stories written by robots who tell them to buy stocks in robots. The robots don't think they need to hire you because they read a story written by a robot, which then went out and bought a lot of stock in the company that makes robots. And now that robot company is a fucking billionaire. So you've got billionaire robots out there writing stories by robots that the market then looks at without checking any human interaction whatsoever and bid up stock prices up to billions and billions of dollars a pound and then fire everybody because they're not robots. You're being discriminated against because you're not a fucking robot. Collateral reuse fuels markets. I love this story because it's very specific to the UK and why you should vote yes. In the US, the SEC restricts prime broker use of rehypothecated collateral from their clients. Now in English law, by contrast, there's no such constraint. These collateral chains can become awesome engines of contagion. What this means is that in the UK, it's not like the US, in the UK they have what's called infinite rehypothecation. You can sell the same bond an infinite number of times. So if I'm HSBC and I create a bond, I can sell to Barclays, or I can sell to a pension fund, or I can send it to another customer. And I can sell that same bond over and over and over again. There's no law against it. I am rehypothecating that bond. I don't have to put a reserve requirement. I don't have to account for it on my balance sheet. It's basically it's counterfeiting. And there's no law against it. That's why the AIG scandal was in the UK. Lehman Brothers was mostly in the UK. The Madoff scandal was mostly in the UK. The AIG, I think I mentioned. All of these major scandals of the past 20 years all have their nexus in the City of London because of this one very basic law. You can loan anything over and over and over again and sell it an infinite number of times, take a fee each time, without having to record it. And of course what happens eventually, there's a day like 2008 where the liquidity dries up and everything blows up. And then the government bails out the creditors. Never in history has the government's been bailed out the creditors. Throughout history, governments usually bail out the debtors. You know, in the Bible, it's a 7 years period, what do they call it? The 7-year period of bailout or something.
Itch.
The itch, yeah. And only in this period that we live in did the government bail out the creditors. So these are the bankers. These are the folks that are at the heart of a very corrupt system. They're engaged in massive fraud. They launder money for drug cartels, for terrorists. They're engaged in accounting fraud. They're engaged in counterfeiting. They're engaged in market manipulation. They're stealing hundreds of billions of dollars. The Bank of England is implicated. There's a collusion going on. It's at the center of it all. And of course, no greater scoundrel than Fred Goodwin. Or the Royal Bank of Scotland, of course, is one of the worst players in all of this. A lot of people don't know that Fred Goodwin actually started life as a tapeworm. He's actually a bona fide parasite. So in the case of Fred Goodwin, I'll give you a little idea. He started life, he was living inside the anus of a Cocker Spaniel. Then this Cocker Spaniel pooped or shitted, or as a Barclays Bank customer.
There's a jobby!
Then this Cocker Spaniel jobby. Am I using that correctly? It sounds odd. A jobbit!
Jobby!
I feel Scottish already. Wow. I want my fucking castle. So there he is. He's a tapeworm. He's coming out of the dog's anus. Let's see if I can get to. It's like. I'm Fred Goodwin. I'm a tapeworm. He lands on a lettuce patch and ends up being consumed by George Osborne, who then has the foresight to make him head of RBS, and that's the Fred Goodwin story. But my point is that these guys are the terrorists, and the reason I mention this is because David Cameron said recently, and I quote, "An independent Scotland would be at greater risk from terror attacks, as it would lose the protection of Britain's military and security services. Quitting the UK is wrong. The world is so dangerous. It's better to be in the UK with top-heavy defense budget." I just described to you in the last 20 minutes the real terrorists: HSBC, Lloyds, Royal Bank of Scotland, Barclays. They finance terror. They finance the arms manufacturer. They engage in a destruction of the UK economy, which has resulted in hardship. The austerity measures are complete nonsense. There has been no austerity. The debt has gone up. It hasn't gone down. He doesn't understand who the real terrorists are. Let's give you an example of a real interaction with a real prime minister and somebody who's a real terrorist, a real Saudi terrorist. You know, let's go back to Tony Blair when he was in office, and there was a huge scandal with the British Aerospace Company was involved in a slush fund, £200 million slush fund. And the Serious Fraud Office was investigating this slush fund. And Prince Bandar of Saudi Arabia was upset that this was happening because it was happening on his watch. And he goes into the Prime Minister's office, Tony Blair's office, number 10 Downing Street, and he says, look, and this is recorded, you can look it up, it's covered in the press, the FT covered it. He's told Tony Blair that if you don't call off the investigation into the slush fund, I cannot guarantee that another 7/7 type bus bombing won't happen in London. That happened in number 10. That happened in a sitting Prime Minister, Tony Blair. And what did Tony Blair do? Fuck me in the ass! Hey, Saudi Prince! Man, that guy takes it up the ass a lot, doesn't he?
Yeah. From his wife.
Woo! Well, you know, to give her credit, she's got a nice strap on. Cherie. Tony! Oh, is that Prince Bandar? So as we mentioned before, Gordon Brown sold Britain's gold. He sold 400 tons. he did so, a lot of people don't understand, you know, at the time, why did he sell the gold? It was at the worst price in decades. He sold it at a price below the market. Below the market. At the time, now it's been revealed by the Telegraph that a bank in New York, working with Goldman Sachs, was short gold. They needed the gold price to go down, and Gordon Brown obliged. He sold 400 tons, billions and billions of pounds worth of gold at rock bottom prices to bail out a bank. That's, to me, financial terrorism. That's the bad guys. Those are the bad guys. That's what David Cameron should be protecting against. How about, again, Royal Bank of Scotland? They got a 17 million pound bonus for thieving RBS loan unit. This is their little unit. The global restructuring group destroyed businesses on purpose that didn't belong to them, and they scalped the profits. They pushed businesses to insolvency. They intercepted payouts, put it in their own bank account. They stripped assets, sold assets illegally without customer knowledge, and they were operating in accounts of other customers over at NatWest and Coots without their knowledge. That's RBS. They're out there essentially just putting companies out of business to book a profit. We have Neil Mitchell on my show, Keiser Report, who detailed this. He's in the audience tonight. Neil, where are you? Neil, raise your hand. There he is. He's the whistleblower. He's the whistleblower on RBS. And thanks so much for that. Documents tie RBS, the same unit, to the Bin Laden family. Citigroup ordered to pay $285 million derivatives fraud. Goldman, they package the subprime, sell them to customers, then bet against the customers. So here you have Goldman Sachs, the same company that Gordon Brown worked with to sell your gold. They get involved in the subprime business. They illegally make loans. They then take those loans that they illegally made and they repackage them into securities illegally. Then they sell them to pension accounts illegally. And then they make bets against the people that they just sold them to profit from the decline illegally. Okay, so these are the people that are at the heart of the establishment that's fucked Scotland for years, and this is why you need to get out of this whole nightmare. Lloyd's were toxic. Okay, here's where things get to. I described to you the terrorism. I described to you the real threat. I described to you that the major media here in the BBC is worthless and they're corrupt. They work hand in hand with the banking system. They're in bed with HSBC. They're in bed with Lloyd's. They're not objective at all. They're completely biased. They serve the interests of the corpocracy. They're no good. But things get even crazier when you dig down to some of these stories. Here's Lloyd's, where toxic bonus targets made staff missell to themselves. Lloyd's fined £28 million for operating a toxic culture that led one desperate salesman to missell policies to himself to avoid automatic demotion. Automatic demotion. The robots. See? The robots. They had an algorithm. So he missold to himself. Now going back to where are these people, where do they work for, where do they come from? Here's a story from the Wall Street Journal. Lessons from the brain-damaged investor. UK investment banker. At one major investment bank for which I worked, he says, they use psychometric testing to recruit psychopaths because their characteristics exactly suited them to senior corporate finance roles. One of them was Robert Bales, a US soldier who went over to Afghanistan and massacred 16 civilians. But he was a great stockbroker. Banks, it turns out, are taking out insurance money on their employees and then encouraging them to kill themselves to collect on the insurance money. This is a scandal tied to JP Morgan. A stressed Bank of England official stabbed himself to death. Christopher Dyrod, 52, found in a car after shooting himself to death. There's been 12 banker suicides in the past year. And this brings me to the first half, which I'm now taking a break or a pause to enact for you, as I promised at the top of the show, my interpretation of the 9/11 incident. I will do mine as a theatrical presentation for you, complete with special effects. And on my show, Keiser Report, we've had on the show a few times Jim Rickards. Do you know Jim Rickards? He's been on the show.
Yep.
And what the hell are you smoking down there?
He's a V pronunciation.
Joby.
Good shit. Really good shit.
Jim's a double agent.
That's good. You're not smoking. Well, you're just very quiet. Were you here last night? Look for money. No? Oh, Bitcoin? Okay. This guy's trying to fight the robots. That's good. Robot's gonna die. Who else we got in here? Who's in the back? How's it going? Very quiet back there. Hey, where are you from? You a local person? From a local town? You come out of town?
Yeah, from Glasgow.
From Glasgow? Gee, are you familiar with this word, Dobie or Bobie? Or? Do you know what that word means? Does it ring a bell for you? Okay. I think she had some of what you were having before. These guys, you know, these guys here look like assassins. If I mention Barclays one more time, I'm going to be killed. Okay, this could be my last show. Who else we got over here? From table. Hey, how's it going? New York City? Have you been in New York City? Been there recently? You want to go there? You want to get the hell out of here? Get me the hell out of Glasgow. Anywhere but Glasgow. Get me to New York City. All right, we'll leave them alone. All right, so I see Stacy Herbert. Stacy Herbert, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, she's hot.
You love her.
She's hot, man. She's so hot. A lot of people say, you've been doing the show so long, what motivates you to do the show? It's obvious. It's the only 1 hour or 3 hours a week where I get to actually talk without being interrupted. I'm joking. Joking. Now I'm in trouble. Okay, so as promised, 9/11. So Jim Rickards' book, yeah, who said he's a double agent? He probably is a double agent. He's a smart guy. He works for the intelligence agencies, and nevertheless, he's got a book out there called Death of Money. And in the first chapter, he details quite explicitly that in the 3 days leading up to the 9/11 events, there was, in the CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, they were very, very aware of the fact that there was, insider trading relating to 9/11. Oh, thanks so much. Thanks. Ah, that's good. That's good Scottish water. Where's the whiskey? So it's 3 days before the event. They're there. They're sitting in Langley and they're watching the markets, the options market, and they're screaming. There's going to be an event happening with these airplanes. It was completely known. Now my Wall Street career was on Wall Street, trading options. I've traded millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of options over the years at various firms. I know the options market, and the options are very sensitive instruments. I remember when the space shuttle disaster blew up, the booster rocket firm that made the booster rocket exploded, and of course within a few seconds the stock crashed and the options went up dramatically in price. And if you were quick and you bought those options, you could have made a lot of money. I mean, it's a bit macabre, but there you are. You're making money. The booster rocket blows up. The woman is in the ocean. It's all done. But those put options are skyrocketing in value. That's what happens when something blows up. But here there was 3 days before 9/11, and the options on American Airlines and United Airlines are blowing up as if there's been a big explosion. It's as if something just blew up. So everybody on the street was talking about this. I was talking to my former employer, Alex Brown, and they were aware of the story that there was an event coming in New York. These options were exploding in value. Previously, their CEO, Buzzy Krongard, had moved from Alex Brown to work directly under George Tenet at the CIA, right across the river there in Baltimore, Maryland. Kenner Fitzgerald, who I just sold my company to a few months before, moved the entire company to the top floor of the World Trade Center. Those brokers, they knew about the story. It was coming. Things were happening. So it was widely understood that there was this catastrophe. What's not widely understood, after piecing together all the pieces of the puzzle, there was $5 million left over in an account at Alex Brown that was uncollected. And it looks like there was a broker in the second tower that went down who was trading those options and had a decision to make. Do I stay or do I go? And it looks like he chose to stay. So let's see, this is the mentality that we're dealing with. So here you have, beautiful day, blue skies. There's this airplane in the sky. Dun dun, dun dun, dun dun. Uh-oh, making a wrong turn. Dun, 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 dun. Here it comes at this peculiar vector, heading for New York, downtown. Oh my God, there's something in the way. It's the first tower. Oh, what's happening? Oh my God, this is an incredible catastrophic blow-up. Now, every news channel in the world is fixated on New York City. The media is zooming in on tower, this next tower. There's brokers, there's bankers, they're scrambling, they're mad, it's all crazy. But the options market's looking juicy. Those puts on airline stocks are going higher, baby. It looks like somebody at Morgan Stanley was thinking, should I stay or should I go? So think of the mentality of this. Think of this. Think of with the brain, the mindset that goes into this type of thing. There's a tower on fire, and there's another plane coming, and your decision at that point is to stretch out and make a few extra bucks on put options at United Airlines. Oh my God, that was a bad idea. And of course, that broker never collected on those profits. But they died rich. And that, unfortunately, is the mentality that drives this global banking system. They would kill themselves before they helped you. That's, to me, the definition of what a lot of people think terrorism is all about. They believe in an ideology, in this case, free market neoliberalism. They misread a classic book by your own Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations, where they cherry-pick sentences to support their own warped ideology of profits before anything else. And they're willing to kill themselves and others for the glory to be dying rich.
Yeah.
Right? So you, yeah. So you've got two groups of jihadis here. You've got the obvious fanatics, and then you've got George Osborne. And that is the first half. And notice that I just keep rolling. Okay, the intermission's over. Now I'm going to do my second half. Holy shit, it's hot in here. Okay. That's no problem. I'm fine. You want to get a drink?
Yeah.
Fair lady? You going to get her some water? We're going to do another 30 minutes if you can handle it. Can you handle it? Okay, it's a little tight, a little hot. You can do a little drink order. This woman's leaving. She's heading out. She got something to do tomorrow. She's got to be. Got to go ahead, catch a train. Okay, it's right around the corner. Nice to see you. Where are you headed? Okay. All right. Anyone else got to catch a train? There's a seat opening up in the front. My name is Max Keiser. I do a show called The Keiser Report. All right, I'm ready for part number 2. Here we go. Strap in. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, are you short of cash?
Yes.
The austerity sandwich is for you. Scientists in Britain claim that they discovered the cheapest lunch in Britain. It consists of 2 slices of bread surrounding a filling of another slice of bread for 7.5p. Thank you, the Times of London. Let's talk about again one of the major risks. I think one of the very prime reasons why you need to dump the Queen completely is the NHS is being privatized in England and UK, all over the UK. You still hear clinging on to a functioning NHS, but over in London, it's being destroyed. It's being absolutely gutted by private contractors. And again, we look to the US as to see where it's going. Here's a story from the US. It describes you where the NHS is going which you can stop if you become independent. Isaac Gagnon stepped off the school bus sobbing. His mother saw steel crowns on his teeth. A dentist's statement in his backpack said he had received 2 root canals, the crowns, and 10 x-rays at school without parental notification. It was determined later that this dental work was unneeded. Isaac's dentist was dispatched to his school by Reach Out Healthcare America, a dental management services company that is in the portfolio of Morgan Stanley's private equity partners, operating in 22 states and deals with 1.5 million patients. So here you have a private equity group that sends out rogue dentists to perform involuntary root canals on kids to make their yacht payments. That's the future of healthcare here, if you let what's happening in the NHS right now make its way here. Here's another trend that the government, UK government, is involved with here. The government report suggests that raising interest rates on all student debts issued over the past 15 years are going to affect 3.6 million students and 40 billion pounds in debt. Why are they going to do this? To make the debt more attractive to buyers like Rothschild Investment Bank. Adding extra years, stretching over the entire working career of the students, will make this debt more attractive as they sell it off to private equity. So here you have again. You've got 40 billion pounds of debt, 3.6 million students. They're going to retroactively go back in time and raise the rate on that debt so they can sell it off to a buyer, another buyer. They don't want it on their books. They don't want responsibility for it. They created it. They don't want responsibility for it. They've also hired the coalition government debt collectors. And they've targeted the public, and they've targeted 215,000 people that they want to go after for this. They need to get the debt off their books because they want to make it look like GDP as a percentage of debt is going up or looks attractive. So instead of going after the banks and getting them to obey the law and having that debt be realized in actual terms, they're going to try to grow the GDP of the country to make it look like the debt is a smaller part of that GDP. So what has the government of Britain just announced? The government of Britain is now going to add to the GDP sex and drugs, which they say will add 10 billion pounds to GDP. According to the Office of National Statistics, each of UK's 60,879 prostitutes took 25 clients a week at an average price of £67.16p. Can anyone confirm those figures? One hand back there. Okay, they've also decided that they're going to include in the GDP 38,000 heroin users. They've assumed the sales of 754 million pounds, assuming 37 pounds per gram of heroin. Again, can anyone confirm? So it's the government, instead of going after the bankers who are laundering money from the drug cartel. HSBC, 700 million pound fine. The new head of the BBC worked for the HSBC, involved in covering up laundering money for the drug cartels. Instead of going after the source of where these drug cartels are operating, which is destroying the fabric and the society, they decided to include the heroin in GDP. That's a complete, I think, nonsense. As I said before, global debt to GDP is now 435%. It was 403% in 2007. So all the austerity has not done anything to decrease the debt. When Osborne said we need to do austerity to decrease the debt, there hasn't been any decrease in debt. The debt's gone up. It's gone up all over the world. Austerity there is no austerity. There's just increased debt. But there is, on the other hand, 1 million new payday loans every month. Wonga raised their interest rates to 5,853%. And a lot of that money goes into the coffers of the Tory party. Conservative donor, government advisor Adrian Beecroft, major stake in Wonga.
And in church.
Osborne benefit, Osborne, he put in a law where the benefit recipients have to wait an additional 2 or 3 days, and it was widely understood that this would help Wonga more than anybody else. Then you have GDP boosting tricks in America. The case for dwarf tossing. A Republican in Florida and wants to bring back dwarf tossing as a way to stimulate the economy. Georgia considers replacing firefighters with free prison labor. In the UK, the Working Prisons Initiative Justice Secretary, Kenneth Clark, wants prisoners to work for 40 hours a week. So they have one of the country's largest jail operators, G4S. So here you have the privatized prison business now encroaching into the public space, the commonwealth, the common good, without any stop from the government. And it's getting much worse. You know, there's this global trade agreement, TTIP, which would give these global institutions complete dominion over the UK, where the government can't stop them from suing anybody at any time. And again, you can hit the ejector button and get out of this nightmare. Within a day, you can hit the ejector button, and all of this goes away. Well, not all of it, but a good substantial amount of all of these hardcore criminal psychopaths, private prison operators, student loan sharks. They all get a big fat kick in the teeth. Rail fares in the north rise by 162%. But according to the Bank of England, there's no inflation. Right? Because they don't include rail fares in their calculation. They include things like garments made in Bangladesh. They include things like, well, your iPhone is twice as powerful, so therefore it's half as cheap. That's seriously what they do. So they say there's no inflation, there's deflation. We have to keep interest rates at low rates. The fact that all of the 4 major banks have hundreds of billions, if not trillions of loans that are no good, that we've decided to park on our balance sheet, nice to see you again, doesn't factor into the fact that every time they roll over those debts, they have to do so at ever cheaper interest rates, or they must declare those 4 big banks insolvent, which technically they are. If you went into and did an accounting of the actual assets and liabilities of those 4 big banks in the UK, including the Royal Bank of Scotland and others, you would find that they are insolvent. The only thing that keeps them going is the Bank of England and Osborne and the rest keeping rates near 0% and growing this massive Ponzi scheme.
Let them fail.
That's right. Exactly. It goes on the cheating, as I mentioned on the inflation number. You go back to Margaret Thatcher. She had what's called the RPIX, which was her calculation of inflation. She called it, quote, inflation minus the nasty bits. And we're getting toward the end here. I'm going to just mention that the cost of the bailouts, the public debt for the past 5-6 years, 47 pounds in debt for every 1 pound in GDP. So it's just enormous cost inefficiency. And let's get into some quotes. I'm going to wrap it up with some quotes here, if that's okay. And we're going to start with this one from Warren Buffett. He says, there's class warfare all right, but it's my class, the rich class, that's making war, and we're winning. Again, you can stop this. You can stop this. You can. I believe you. My tits are so hard right now, I can't tell you. I'm getting so excited.
We'll win it for you, we'll win it for us, the fucking people.
We're going to leave here, and we're going to go on a march. We're going to leave this joint, and we're going to march to my castle. We're going to march to my castle. We're going to smoke that, whatever she's smoking, and we're going to reclaim it. And we're going to go kill the bankster. All right, so then, here's another quote. According to Mark Carney, jailing bankers will not fix bad behavior.
Killing them might.
Yeah, exactly. He got the Tower of London there for a reason.
Fuck London.
You know, it's right there. Bring him to Glasgow. You know, you just slay him. Slay him.
He said the Gallagher.
Last man hung.
Here's
Sorry, man.
No, it's okay. We're having a little moment here. I'm gonna get to know you a little bit better. What's your name, Philip?
John.
John. Okay.
The last man hung in Glasgow was Emmanuel, who was hung at the Tronggate
Oh, really?
in the 1950s.
Really?
It's still there. I reckon we can get that noose working and fucking.
Does anyone else know this? Known story? Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's got the rope? It's not that hard to do. The neck snaps pretty easily. We saw it with Saddam Hussein. It should have been George Bush. So, okay, Sean Fitzpatrick, former CEO of Anglo-Irish, he said, quote, "The cause of our problem was global, so I can't say sorry with any kind of sincerity. I suggest you cut the sacred cows of Irish society, children, the elderly, and healthcare." Okay, that's who you're dealing with. And so why wouldn't you want to be independent? You know, there's not like everybody here is pure as a driven snow. I'm not saying that, of course not. But you're dealing with an entrenched kleptocracy that's been there for hundreds of years that are blatantly and dangerously committing acts of financial terrorism. The danger is when the jihadis come, if you're as far away from London as possible, you're going to be a lot safer. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, the jihadis are not going to come to frickin' Glasgow. But if a guy in a tartan suit, you know, shows up in Afghanistan and it goes up on some video and knock video alarm, you know, whatever. That's when Germans meets Saddam Hussein. It's not a good sign. Keep tartan out of Afghanistan. We don't want to see tartan in there and Iraq. We don't want tartan. Keep tartan in Scotland. Yeah. Keep it here. Anytime if it leaves Scotland, shoot that motherfucker. Keep it here. We don't want to see any video. Who's this Jihad John? He sounds like he's from Eton. He's like he left there and ate like a spotted dick pudding. He's not a haggis eater. See, I know one thing about Scotland. Thank you. Thank you. I know one thing about that.
You're still not getting your castle.
So sad.
It's a deep
beg a bit
So
more.
sad.
It's a deep fried haggis.
Deep fried? Deep fried Snicker bar. How about, who said this? Executive public sector workers should be executed.
Everyone.
That was Jeremy Clarkson from the BBC.
He's up there.
Now, you know, on BBC Newsnight recently, they had a special expert from America, Paul Krugman, who was saying, you know, separation, you know, independent would be catastrophic. Okay, let me give you some quotes from Paul Krugman in the past to give you an idea of where this guy's coming from. He said, "My proposal is that we have to get a bunch of scientists to tell us we're facing an alien invasion. And in order to be prepared for that invasion, we have to do things like build high-speed rail. And then we've discovered we discover they're not here, we can say, look, there were no aliens."
He's smoked more than I.
Right. And then he said, he also said after the bubble, NASDAQ crash, Alan Greenspan needs to create a housing bubble. Which is what they did. And I'll leave you with two quotes. Number one, from John Locke, 1790, who said, "When the social contract is broken, the people must revolt." So, has the social contract been broken?
Yes!
Peacefully! Peacefully!
I hear you now.
We've lost it up!
Bob Marley. No, of course. I mean, think of all the people throughout history who have had. I mean, I think with Scotland, I think is in shock because all you have to do is pick a button and you're free. I mean, as opposed to think of all the struggling countries in history that have had to
We're lucky!
go to the barricades and struggle. Blah, blah, blah. You're like, what time is it? Freedom. Okay, this is my last quote. This is from Frederick Bastiat from 1850. "When plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men living together in society. They create for themselves, in the course of time, a legal system that authorizes plunder and a moral code that glorifies plunder. Ladies and gentlemen, vote yes.